Thank you. I'm going to talk about the walk that I did to Santiago de Compostela. So I did it 4 years ago at this time of year. I was coming towards the end at this time in September. And just thinking really about the Bible has a lot to say about journeying. We see Abraham going on that great long journey, not knowing where God was going to take him. And then we see Moses wandering around Sinai and the desert with the people. It does not take 40 years to get across, but they were wandering around and being guided by God. And there's all sorts of journeying in the Bible, and there's all sorts of bits that speak about God guiding our paths. There's all sorts of bits about, we think about the road to Emmaus where they met Jesus and they didn't know it was Jesus, and they say, weren't our hearts burning within us when they realised who it was? And actually this morning I was reading about Paul on the road to Damascus, who had the most amazing journey, and really his story ended out completely differently to what he'd set out to do, to go and persecute the Christians, but actually met Jesus instead, and then became one of the greatest preachers and writers of doctrine and letters that we've ever seen. So there's been a long history of journeying with Christians, and then when the Roman Empire became Christian, a lot of people used to make the pilgrimage to Jerusalem. And the Stations of the Cross come from where people used to follow Jesus' last steps on the way to the cross. People who couldn't go to Jerusalem used to do the Stations of the Cross on Good Friday or at other times to kind of replicate that journey. But then I think it was 1453 or something that Jerusalem fell for the last time. And people were doing more pilgrimages to Rome and then to Santiago de Compostela in northwest Spain, which is, the legend has that St. James, the brother of Jesus, that's where his bones are. And Compostela means field of stars, that he was buried in a starry field, I suppose. And there were pilgrim routes that stretched all the way through Europe to go to Santiago. So this is the route that I did from just inside France, over the Pyrenees, and then this is the coast, along the top of Spain, to Santiago de Compostela, which is, I think, just under 500 miles. And so pilgrimage really fell out of, it was very, very big in medieval times, but then fell out of favour it was very dangerous, and fell out of favour really with the Reformation. But there's been much more of a resurgence in people making these journeys. And actually, I think it was 2020. It was very unfortunate that it was, not the only reason it was unfortunate, there was COVID, but it was the year of pilgrimage. And I was up in Durham at the time, and they'd set up a load of pilgrim routes that all converged on Durham that one day I'm going to have to walk. So it's definitely something that's increasing. And the whole thing is really the tension between the destination. You're walking to a destination that's a significant place, but also the main thing is the journey. So it's the tension between destination and journey. And for me, really, it was more about the journey. So it came at quite a significant... I'm hoping this is going to work. Yes. It came at quite a significant... Can everybody see the pictures? Am I in the way? It came at quite a significant time of my life because I'd done 25 years to the day of medicine and stopped working. And then I was about to go to Durham to go to theological college at the end of September to train for ordination. And so I thought, well, I don't really need to work until the last minute. When am I going to get 6 or 7 weeks off work again? Oh, I think I'd like to walk the Comino. Wouldn't that be brilliant? So I just sold my house just outside of Taunton a couple of weeks before, given up work maybe 4 days before. And this is me on Taunton Station, getting ready to get the train all the way down to the bottom of France to get across to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port to start walking the next day, which was probably a bit silly because actually somebody was on the line at Ashford on the Eurostar, and so I very nearly missed my connection in Paris, and the whole thing would have gone wrong. But I didn't. I got it with 4 minutes to spare, so that was brilliant. So here we are, my first day. I'm in Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port, which is just at the bottom of France. Lovely, really, really, really pretty place. And you can see the marker. And I started off, there's a church here just at the end of the little town where you can go in. And I went in and just said a prayer and gave my journey and gave myself to God to do this walk. And then I'm going out through the door of the door of Spain. To start to set off up the Pyrenees. And what was really important was there were two really important, I'm sure, I forgot to ask, has anybody walked this pilgrimage to Santiago? I hate to say things people might know already, but there's a couple of things that you need. So you need a scallop shell on your, here it is on my backpack, because it's a symbol of being a pilgrim, and I don't know, everyone's got one. And the other thing you need is your credenzial, which is you get stamped along the way to prove that you've done the route. And partly by having it, it means that you can stay in the cheap hostels that are for pilgrims. And it also means that at the end, you can get your certificate to say that you did it when you get to Santiago. And the very important thing is that you do not have very much stuff in your backpack. So my backpack was probably, without water, I think was about 8 kilos. And there's all stories of people starting off with too much and over the first couple of days having less and less and less and less. So I was really, really, really ruthless about what went in my backpack. But the most important thing that I took was nappy pins, because I'd bought a jolly cheap rucksack and it fell apart halfway along and I had to do it up with nappy pins for the rest of the way. So this is halfway up the Pyrenees. You can go, there's a very, very long day's walk into Spain, but there's a lovely little hostel here at this place called Orison. And I stayed halfway up, and it proved to be a really good move, because we all sat round, and it's in the middle of nowhere, so everyone has dinner together. And it's everybody's first night of the pilgrimage, and people are going for varying distances. And everybody went round the room and said, what's your reason for walking? Because lots of people do it at a significant time in their life. Maybe they've just got divorced, or maybe they're changing job, or they've been made redundant, or somebody's died. And so I said, well, I'm at a big change in my life, or whatever. And it was a very bonding experience. And over the next few days, those of us who'd stayed at Orison, we felt like we were a little tribe, really. So then the next day, over the Pyrenees to this place Roncesvalles, which is where a lot of Spanish people start. And lots of the animals have bells around their necks, and it was really, really misty as we were walking over. And so you could just hear all the animals in the mist. And then carrying on, we're now into Spain, and you're following the markers all the way, these yellow markers, and there's yellow arrows painted on things, and there's lots of these marker posts. And yeah, walking through past a magnesite mine and, to all these places. And most people that I had got to know at Orison were travelling on to Pamplona. But for some reason, I haven't put a photo of it, I decided I wanted to stay at this place that was about 4 miles short, that looked very picturesque by the river and was some ancient monastery. So I stopped off a little bit early at Trinidad de Are, and it was lovely, but I had this terrible sense I've been left behind. Everybody's gone on, and I'm never going to catch them up, because even if you're only one day behind people, you're never going to see them again. And that night, or maybe it was the next day, I think I got several WhatsApps from different groups of people saying, oh, we're missing you, we're in Pamplona, or we're somewhere or other, thinking, oh, I've got left behind. And that was the first time really on that journey when I had to think, I'm doing my journey, I'm doing my Camino, and it's at my pace, and I don't have to go with the crowd, I don't have to be with everybody else. And it was the first kind of, it sounds a bit melodramatic, but the first loss really. I'd lost my tribe. And actually through the weeks ahead, there was lots of meeting people and then losing them because maybe I took a day off somewhere, or we were doing different paces. And there were times of loneliness where maybe for a week or so I didn't meet anyone who spoke English and was a bit on my own, and other times of surplus, when I knew too many people and I had too many people to go out to dinner with, and how did I choose? So it's very much, I was reading my diary, it was like day by day, step by step, taking it one thing at a time. So I decided that I was going to have a day off in Pamplona because I thought I must see it, it's an iconic place. Got there, it was lovely, it was really, really nice, and actually everybody really embraces the Camino. So I don't know whether you can see, but on this house there's lots of scallop shells set into the walls. And I got there and I went to a very iconic cafe in a square, had a coffee, thought, oh, actually, I've been enjoying the peace and quiet. I don't think I can stay here after all. So I walked on a little bit further to a town outside and stayed at a hostel that's run by the Order of Malta, because there's lots of municipal hostels that you can stay in, and there's lots that are organised by confraternities who put up pilgrims. And so, and then I'm again with people, I don't think anybody spoke English. It was a bit basic. I'm on my own. But it was great because it was the first day that I got up in the dark and watched the sunrise. And it was to be the first of many, 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 many sunrises and sunflowers. And suddenly this sense of embracing the moment. I was in the moment and, I just had a few things on my back. I was between lives and could just totally start to immerse myself just in the present moment and enjoying what was there. And climbed up this hill where there's this amazing sculpture that's called Where the Path of the Wind Crosses with That of the Stars. And it's called the Hill of Forgiveness. So I went up there, this lovely view, and I'd had a really, really horrible time a few days before going down a very steep hill that was very rocky, and I'd hurt my knee. It'd been very painful to walk the next day. And I was up there and I was thinking, there's a really steep path down. It's really rocky. It's going to be difficult. I'm not going to enjoy it. And as I was starting to descend, I just watched a man at the top there just enjoying the place and just enjoying the moment. And I thought, as I was halfway down, I got it wrong. I should have spent more time up there embracing the moment and not just, I've got to get down this terrible hill. I want it out of the way. So that was a lovely place. And then down into Puente La Reina. Again, a really early start, and just before this lovely old bridge that it's named after, went past a little church, and it was dawn. It was the sun hadn't risen, but it was just starting to get light. And there were I couldn't see them because they were around the corner, but there was a group of nuns in there just singing praises to God early in the morning. And it was I sat there for a moment, and it was just such a magic moment before then going up through the olive groves, up and down through villages, and a very hot day where I think we walked on a Roman road, which was the toughest thing on my feet ever, all these cobbly sort of road. I thought, poor old Romans, I've got my walking boots on. And, and the relief of sitting in the shade of a motorway bridge, underneath it. Some shade, how wonderful. And onto this lovely place, Estella. And I had half a day off there. And I think this was probably the first or second maybe the second place that I went to. A lot of the bigger places would have a pilgrim mass, so there'd be a mass every day. And obviously I'm not a Catholic, so I couldn't receive, but I could understand vaguely what was happening in the Spanish, and I could always share the peace. But at the end, if you were a pilgrim, they'd call people forward and they would pray a blessing for you, which was really, really lovely. And at this little church, a man gave me this little yellow arrow brooch and said, so many people gave me things as I went along, little shells or food or little presents. There was this real sense of people wanting to journey with you as you went along. And he gave me this card that I took a photo of, which was lovely. It says, "You're blessed, pilgrim, if you discover that the way opens your eyes to what cannot be seen. You're blessed, pilgrim, if what most occupies your mind is not simply getting there, but getting there alongside your companions. You're blessed, pilgrim, when you contemplate the way and you discover that it's overflowing with names and daybreaks," definitely names and daybreaks, people I met and the sunrises. "You're blessed, pilgrim, when words cannot express your gratitude at every surprise that springs from each twist and turn of the way. You're blessed, pilgrim, because you've discovered that the true way begins when it ends. You're blessed, pilgrim, if your rucksack becomes emptier and emptier of clutter, while your heart struggles to find room to hang on to so many emotions. You're blessed, pilgrim, if you discover that one step backwards to come to someone's aid is worth more than 100 steps forwards without a sideways glance. You're blessed, pilgrim, if you find that the way is paved with silence, the silence of prayer, and prayer for a meeting with the Father who is with you, loves you, and waits for you." So they had these in lots and lots of different languages, and that gave me a lot to think about. And as I say, there's lots of hospitality and there's lots of strange things, but this particular place, there's a red wine maker I think they give 1,000 litres of red wine every day for pilgrims. And so this is the red wine fountain. But I arrived there about 7:15 in the morning, so I obviously did have a little sip, but it wasn't really quite the moment at the beginning of my day to want to have a lot of red wine. But what fantastic thing. And then on through, I can't convey how hot it was, just these hot routes, and into Los Arcos. And as we were getting into Los Arcos, I realised there was a fiesta. How exciting! Walked in, and there's all these big, puppet things. Oh, how exciting! There's a fiesta, and then they barricaded off all the streets behind the colonnades, and they had all the bulls running in the street. Wow! Although I'm not sure what I thought about all that. But, how fantastic, a fiesta, how exciting, except that the music didn't finish till about 5:30 in the morning. And so after that, whenever I got to a town and they said, there's a fiesta, I'd be like, oh, can I walk a bit further? I don't think I want to go to another fiesta. I need some sleep. And Logroño got to one of the big cities, and everywhere you go, there's pilgrim meals. They're so supportive of people who are walking this route, and you can get a cheap meal, a very nice meal, 2 or 3 course meal. So I went into one of the big squares in Logroño and sat down at this restaurant at the outside table, and the waiter just came up and said, "Do you want the pilgrim menu?" I was thinking, I clearly look awful. Clearly look, I could only be a pilgrim. I've got one spare set of clothes and But all the way along, people are welcoming you along. Buen Camino. You find it on the paths, you find it in underpasses, you find everywhere you go. And lots of people leaving things out for pilgrims as well. And saying, Buen Camino. On to Navarrete. And I went into this church. I mean, it's so ornate, isn't it? So ornate. But actually, it was a wonderful, wonderful place. They had beautiful music playing, and they had boards. I've only put one of them on, where people could put what country they came from all around the world, and this lovely music playing and this lovely welcome. And it taught me, I'm ashamed to say, not to judge, because I probably would have gone in and thought, oh, look at all that gold, and look at, oh, it's very ostentatious. I worship Jesus, But actually, Jesus was so present in that church, and it was so overwhelmingly moving to sit in God's presence and feel the welcome of that church family there, even though it looked so very grand inside. And then, we're in Rioja country now, so the red grapes, beautiful, beautiful places. It was lovely to get to places in the evening or in the afternoon and have a chance to look around, the different places that were there. And just walking along, as I say, yellow arrows everywhere. And then coming into this place, again, it was very hot. It was a very dry, stony path that seemed to go on for ages. And I was conscious of a young Korean guy who was probably in his 20s, but really, really, really struggling along, it looking like he's in agony with his knee. And I thought about the fact that even though I was walking very slowly, I couldn't believe there was anybody walking slower than me. Actually, I could be the one for once to hang back and walk with someone. And as we were talking, I just had this overwhelming sense of offer to pray for him. Oh. So in the end, I said to him, I don't want to embarrass you, but I don't know whether I could pray for you. Because he said, I'm never going to make it to Santiago. If I can pray for you to get to Santiago. And he said, I would really love that. I'm a Catholic. And so I prayed for him. And then he said to me, can I pray for you? I said, I would love that. So he prayed for me. I don't know what he prayed. He prayed in Korean. We hobbled to the edge of this town, Santo Domingo, and I never saw him again. And I often thought, I wonder what happened to that chap. But actually, weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks later, I was looking at someone's photos, a friend's photos, and they said, oh yeah, that guy was really rushing to Santiago because he wanted to catch up with his friend, and said this person's name, the person I'd prayed for hundreds of miles back. And it was really nice to know that he got there. And there's all these quirky things. So in this cathedral in Santo Domingo, there's some myth about something that happened where a chicken came back to life on somebody's plate, the bishop's plate or something. And so there's now a chicken coop in the cathedral that always has chickens in because of this myth and this miracle. And you just love stories like that, don't you? The funny things that you come across. And then on to this place where there's people living, there's cave houses and things here. Now, I really learned a story about not judging by appearances here. So maybe 3 or 4 days before that, I didn't stay in a hostel that night, I stayed in like a B&B above a nice deli. And at breakfast in the morning, there was me and a Swedish couple that I'd got to know, and then these two American men. And the Swedes said, oh, we're going to meet the Mexicans to walk with them this morning at such and such a time. And I said, oh, I saw the Mexicans last night at the pilgrim mass. And these two Americans said, oh, what happened at the pilgrim mass? They didn't look like the kind of people who'd go to a pilgrim mass at all. And I was sort of saying, well, I can't understand it all because it's in Spanish, but it's very similar to the Anglican service. And, it's nice to share the peace and going on and on about it. Fair enough. And then over the next few days, I kept bumping into them. They were faster walkers than me, so we'd have a little chat and then they'd power on. Anyway, so in Bellarado, they didn't happen at every place, but at Bellarado there was a pilgrim mass. So I went to the mass. I was sitting there waiting for the mass to start. And in trooped these two Americans with their hats on and all their robes, and it turned out one was a bishop and one was an archbishop in the Catholic Church in America. And when I went for my blessing, they just looked at me and smiled. And, never judge a book by its cover. And actually, they were wonderful. I had some wonderful, wonderful conversations walking along with them over the next few days. And, it was wonderful. And the real gift for me was they're saying, oh, knowing what your spirituality is like, I think you'd really like this book. And then they took me out for lunch in Burgos. They had to finish at Burgos and paid. It was very nice of them. Well, the bishop said, we'll pay. And he said, well, actually, the archbishop's paying. But they were very nice and said, we don't have women, obviously, ordained in our church. But it's great that you're following God's call and we're going to be praying for you. So that was just so, so, so nice. An early morning shot across the sunflowers and then up onto a big, big hill. And there was a big memorial up there from people who been buried in shallow graves during the Spanish Civil War. And at the top, at this place, San Juan, St. John of the Stinging Nettles, there was just this old, it wasn't a monastery anymore, this old monastery in the middle of nowhere. And stayed up there, stayed the night, met some lovely people at dinner. I'd kind of got into walking, started setting off in the dark because it was much, much, much cooler. You get a lot more done early in the morning than when it got really hot around lunchtime. But at this point, I sort of set off in the dark, as I always did, and suddenly thought, oh, this is really silly. There's this really, really dark forest that I've got to go through in the dark. And inside the forest, I could see this light flashing. I was thinking, oh dear, I would never do this in England. What am I doing? This is a bit silly, isn't it? But it was fine. I just powered along, and they were just another pilgrim walking along, and just kept walking until, got out of some heathland and the dawn was coming. But when you think, oh, what am I doing? I would never do that. Down to the wonderful Burgos with the amazing cathedral, which is full of wonderful treasures. And then we're coming into the Meseta, which is the bit which is quite flat when you get into it, lots of just arable land, and a lot of people take the bus and don't bother with the Meseta because it's boring and it's just same old. But actually, for me, it was the most wonderful bit probably of the journey. So I thought this was very poignant, where on the marker post it just says, listen and observe. Now, when I set off, I was a bit busy because I was selling my house and I was finishing work, and I always have exactly the same walking boots that are kind of fabric ones that you don't need to wear in. I know which brand I like, I know which size I need, so I'm ashamed to tell you I bought a new pair because my old ones were a bit ropey. Actually, I'm still wearing them, and they were a bit ropey, and I thought I better get some new boots for this journey, but I didn't actually wear them in. So they were the right size, but I hadn't read the bit that says, if you're walking in the heat, buy half a size bigger. So I have to say I struggled for 500 miles with really painful feet with these boots that were just too small. And actually, I'm quite sociable. If they hadn't have been painful, I probably would have been powering along, having loads of great chats with people. But actually, I couldn't walk that fast because it was too painful. And this is the only photo I put of someone who became a friend. I was sitting there pretending that I was contemplating the view, whereas actually, I have to get my boot off. It's so painful. As I was coming into this place, this lovely place. But it was good that it made me walk a bit slower, really, because actually I then found that I preferred to walk on my own, and I'd stop at every bar and have a coffee, and I'd always meet people in there that I knew or you didn't know, and you got to know. It was very sociable, lots of chats. But actually for the walking, I managed to develop this real inner silence because I was walking on my own, and particularly where the landscape it's not so flat here, but the landscape wasn't changing very much. I found this sort of inner quiet, and it was really wonderful. Just one story. When I got to this place, this was the place I slept for the night, little village, and there was a cafe there that was run by an Irish lady, and I went up to have an orange juice, and as I was sitting there, she said to me, "Oh, are you a minister?" I said, "No." Although that's funny you should say that. I'm just about to go off and train to do that. Thinking, this is weird. And she said, because I was praying today because I need help, and I prayed that God would send a messenger, and I think you're the messenger. Oh, no pressure. So, okay. And I didn't really have a message, but I did listen to the story and hopefully give her space to reflect about it. But I think maybe that was the first moment I was like, oh my goodness, somebody has recognized something in me that I might be, the sort of person who could do that. So that was wonderful. And then just carrying on in these dry places. This is a convent where the road goes through the middle of the ruin, and this lovely little place down in the hollow, and in the church there was lots of Bibles in different languages, and lots of resources and a place to light candles, and a lovely man gave me a particular cross again. Just people blessed me the whole way along, and then up to this castle. Now, there was a really steep hill to climb the next day, really steep, and I think there'd been a fiesta and I hadn't had very much sleep, so I got up early, and I didn't turn my torch on at all, and I walked by the light of the full moon, and this is on the top, and the moon went from white to cream to pink, and I'm not very good at taking selfies, but I was up there thinking, wow, I can't believe this. I'm walking by the light of the full moon with this view on my own. Life just seemed amazing. I was getting really tuned in really to the landscape and walking and the quietness, and I maybe don't look as ecstatic as I felt, but I was really wide-eyed, this is amazing. And then down, this day was very long, hot road, really long and hot. And then another very long day, very open, a straight road. It might have been a Roman road, I don't know, just not a track, and there was nowhere to stop for water or anything. It was a real slog. But actually, I'd started off in the dark, and I looked at the stop sign and thought, do you know what, I'm going to stop for a bit. Just sat down and had a little rest. And now I've got to, don't worry, I'm not going to talk for much longer because I've spoken for a long time. I'm so sorry. It won't be as long the second half, but this is halfway, and I could get a certificate to say that I was halfway. So that was great. And another pilgrim mass, and the priest was Irish, so he did half of it in Spanish and half of it in English. And at the end I was chatting, so it was so nice to hear something in English, thank you. And then he said, and I think the abbess of the convent came and signed us all with the cross. And then he said, we were just chatting, and then he said, we always take someone from our day when we pray together in the evening, and I'm going to bring you and pray for you in your future as you're walking and as you go off to college. So that was really lovely. This, again, we're on the Meseta, it looks like that, but actually by that point I'd become really attuned to the subtlest changes of colour in the grass, any sound, birds or anything. And actually I looked at my diary, I'd found a kind of such an inner quietness that it was almost like I was just very attuned to the landscape, very attuned to God. And earlier on in the walk, the lonelier weeks at the beginning, I'd written in my diary that I always had this sense of a presence behind me, someone walking behind me, a protective presence. I wasn't on my own as I was walking in those lonely weeks. There was someone kind of with me. And when I finished the walk, I got home on the Friday, and then on the Monday I went to Durham to start college, and there was a service in the cathedral because the college had a significant anniversary. And they read from Isaiah 55, and the bit that talks about the mountains will break forth into, the trees of the field will clap their hands, and the mountains will break forth into singing, which I always thought was a lovely metaphor, and I would do now. But at that time, having done all that walking in the landscape and being quite tuned into it, I was like, oh, I completely get that. Oh, I completely understand. Yes, the trees would clap their hands and the mountains would burst forth into song, which I wouldn't feel now if I read that. But somehow, it was just a wonderful experience to be so tuned into the landscape. Leon, a lovely, lovely cathedral there. And then, walking on all the landscape, keeping going. This place, it was the middle of nowhere. Just felt like stopping. It was very picturesque and it was very, very lovely. But there was a terrible, terrible thunderstorm that night. And I thought, I better not go out because the lightning and the thunder are very close together when I wanted to start walking. Stayed maybe till about 10 o'clock and then thought, I think I'm brave enough to go out. Set out from the place I'd stayed, and probably from here to the end of the church, this lightning bolt hit the ground in front of me. Oh, I think I'll go back inside again. It was really quite terrifying, actually, this lightning bolt. And you see, things all along the way, crosses on the route. This is the highest point, and a lot of people carry a stone to put something significant there. And it was really quite moving seeing what people had written, people they wanted to remember, things. An Irish guy that I was talking to at that point had brought 2 stones from his parents' grave, the marble chippings, to put on there. So it was a very profound thing for a lot of people. I did leave a stone there that I picked up on Iona when I was volunteering there some years before. But and it was just like, well, help me to trust you, God. But actually for me, it wasn't such a significant thing because I felt God was travelling with me the whole way, really. And these beautiful landscapes. I've just got to say that it looks lovely, doesn't it? It does look very beautiful, but this was I'm going to be so quick. I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to speak so long. This was a real low point for me. This was the worst day because I'd bought like a sheet sleeping bag that was impregnated with insecticide. I'd sprayed insecticide all over my backpack. Everybody was in terrible fear of bed bugs. And the night before, I'd got a few mosquito bites. Oh, I feel very itchy, and I looked in the mirror. There was this very obvious line of bed bug bites. It's like, oh, I really can't deny this anymore. I have picked up bed bugs, and I was terrified about taking them back to my parents' house before I went to Durham. And so, fortunately, next to the hostel, there was a big laundrette, and so I washed things. I put everything through these big dryers, my backpack, my boots, everything to kill the bed bugs on this really high temperature. But in a fit of fury, I'm ashamed to say, because I knew it would get broken in the dryer, I cut off my scallop shell. And at the beginning of the walk, I thought, oh, isn't it interesting? People use scallop shells for baptisms. And maybe I'll use my shell in the future for baptism. This will be really special. Anyway, I was so upset about the bed bugs. I cut my shell off and left it in the bin in the bathroom, and I had a little shell on a little bag that someone had given me and cut that off as well. And I stomped along because I felt really itchy and dirty and horrible. My backpack was falling apart and done up with nappy pins. And then and everyone else had set off, and it was too hot to set off. And you can't see, but this had like scallop shell metal things on this bit of, and I was stomping along. I caught my shoulder on this scallop shell. I was like, oh, I just want to go home. And then I was like, oh, I don't have a home. I've sold my home. So I was really not very happy that day. But I got to where I was going. And some British friends that I'd met were staying somewhere. I was going to stay somewhere else, but they said, oh, we know you've had a really bad day. They'll let you come in for dinner. In fact, actually, I stayed there the night. I went in. Oh, I'm feeling itchy thinking about it. So I went in, and this Australian woman ran it, and she gave me a proper cup of English tea. And she said to me, those mosquito bites? And I said, no, they're bed bugs. This is what I've done. You might not want me to stay. I felt like a real pariah. And she said, no, you've done all the right things. You're fine. You can stay. And I said, I cut off my scallop shell. She said, it's all right. I've got a spare one. So for me, my scallop shell that I then put on my backpack is something about the grace of God, isn't it? And second chances. And I didn't really mess up, but we can mess up and do something that we really regret. But God has got us, and God You know, God is the God of second chances and third and fourth and fifth chances. And for me, she just ministered so much of the love of God. It was such a profound experience, really. I don't know which way up this goes now. And then climbing right up to, we're in Galicia now, so it's very, very green, very steep climb up. I got there, another fiesta, and they're going along with bagpipes and statues from the church. But yeah, great place. And then down, and we're getting towards the end of the main journey, because at Sarria, it's the last 100 kilometres, and if you walk 100 kilometres, you can get a certificate, you can get a Compostela. So a lot of people, admittedly, most people, can get a week off work, come and walk for the last week. So I knew that it was kind of the end of the lonely journey. Well, it wasn't lonely because I met lots of people, but the quiet journey, and that was going to get busier. And so this is the last week. And the irony was, all these people who have come for their holiday, who are bouncing along and much fitter than me, saying, oh, don't worry, once you've been walking for a couple of days, you'll be really fast like us, you'll be really fit. I don't think so. I've been doing this for 5 or 6 weeks. I don't think I'm going to get any faster, actually. And actually, my foot really hurts. I'm worried my toe's going to fall off. And, and just these last days, trying to find peace, and then watching the kilometres going down. We're only down to 30 kilometres now, and this sense of, can I arrive? But actually not sure I really want to arrive. And our last night, I think that was a Petrozo, the friends that I've made, we were all quite sad. We were going to walk into Santiago together, but this wonderful journey had ended. And this is me finishing. So this is the great cathedral at Santiago de Compostela. This is me in the square. Pleased to take my boots off. And actually, it was wonderful to arrive, and it was wonderful to arrive with friends who are still friends. But once we got there, kind of the Comino had ended, and there's a special stone that you put your foot on to say you're finished. I put my foot on, and a tourist said, could you take your foot off, please, because I want to take a photo. Thinking, 500 miles for this. That was fine. And then the next day, went to the pilgrim mass in the big cathedral, where they have this huge incense in the Botafumeiro. And you can probably see, there's 1, 2, 3, there's about 6, 7, 8 men, and they pull down on it, and then it swings with the incense. It's quite an iconic, wonderful thing. And actually, would you like to see a very quick little video of it? Excuse me. And you can see them pulling down on it. Yeah. So that was wonderful. And that was actually in the crossing of the cathedral, just the sideways bit, not the main cathedral, and it was kind of hitting the roof. So that was I've spoken for longer than I meant to. That was I was so blessed to have the chance to do that, and then to have that, and I'd walked it to think about ending one life and starting another life. But what I wondered with the rest of the time would be, it's all very well me talking about the lovely time I had and showing my pictures, but it's really a metaphor for life. Walking a pilgrimage or walking a long distance route is a metaphor for life. There's the bedbug days, and they're walking across with the full moon days. Life is like that, isn't it? It has the ups and downs, and sometimes we're aware of God walking with us, and sometimes it's harder to know that. And when it became much more difficult to go on pilgrimage because it was too dangerous, in the great French cathedrals in particular, this is about a third of the diameter of the one in Chartres Cathedral. They built these labyrinths into the floor, which were a way of kind of making a pilgrimage when it was too dangerous to do it. It's not a maze. There's only one route. You can't get lost. You do it very slowly and contemplatively, and it's a journey in, and at the centre, taking time to reflect, and a journey out. And you have them in various places, and sometimes it's nothing magic about it, but for some people they've actually moving and walking is a good way of praying rather than sitting quietly. And so if anybody wanted to walk the labyrinth, they're very welcome to. I've put some things at the back that give you some suggestions of things you could do. One would be to take a stone or some stones in and leave them there. Thinking about doing that at the Iron Cross, or maybe a scripture, or maybe thinking about the journey of your life. I would say if you do it, please take your shoes off. And it's fine if there's more than one person. You need to give people space, but being aware that it's fine to overtake because people go at different speeds. That's not appropriate for everybody. It's not good if you're dizzy or unsteady. On the table at the back, I've also got some finger labyrinths, which is a way of praying as well, where you just go very slow. And actually, I hadn't realised you're supposed to do it with your non-dominant hand. And it can be a way of very slowly just bringing a question to God and a way of stilling yourself. Or it might be that you want to think about the journey of your life, maybe over the last year, or maybe all of your life, thinking about what have been the significant things. You might want to draw it as a path with pictures or words. You might want to write it. You might want to do it like a graph, with ups and downs. But where has God been in all of this for you? Through the journey of your life, and maybe just prayerfully. We're going to play some quiet music. Just prayerfully. If you want to, experimenting with withdrawing or writing. Or if that's not for you, you might want to sit quietly and just reflect. Or there's a few books at the back to do with contemplations you can do related to pilgrimage, if you would like to do that. So I thought, rather than having a discussion time, maybe just having some time for yourself. No one has to share anything they don't want to. No one has to show anything they don't want to. Don't do what you don't want to do. If you go onto the labyrinth and think, I don't like this isn't for me, just leave. It's fine. You can't do anything wrong. But I thought, having talked about my journey, and it was really the journey rather than the destination, having talked about my journey, I thought, well, what are the parallels for us in modern life now? So feel free to do whatever you want to do, and then we will come together and sing a song, and I'll say a prayer, and then we'll finish.